Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be talking about the astrology of February 2024. So we have a really busy month ahead. We are of course now getting used to this new situation we have with Pluto having entered Aquarius. And we're going to get a lot of activation of that position this month. So we're going to get some further hints of how this Pluto in Aquarius transit may manifest moving forwards. We're also going to have a long conjunction between Venus and Mars. So that will begin on the 5th of February. So that's when they are close enough to start to be interacting with one another. And that will last right up until the 10th of March. So it pretty much covers the entire month. So we have some background story about trying to work from the heart, Venus, to get what we want, Mars. This is the attraction factor that comes into play here. What is your heart calling you to do? Your heart, Venus. The action, the doing is Mars. We're also going to have Chiron activating the nodal axis. There are other activations as well, but this is the most important one. So we know then that we're also being asked to do a lot of healing work whilst these big stories are in play. The big story, particularly Pluto in Aquarius. So as we come into the month, I just want to give a nod to my pagan friends across the globe. On the 1st of February, we are celebrating Imbolc in the Northern Hemisphere and Lunasa in the Southern Hemisphere. And if you follow the Wheel of the Year, if you follow these practices, you might also want to know that the astrological date for this festival or these festivals will be the 4th of February. And the reason is that is when the sun will hit 15 degrees of Aquarius, which is exactly halfway between Yule, so the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, and Astraea, which is the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's an exact halfway point when the sun reaches 15 degrees of Aquarius. So on the 5th of February, Mercury will enter Aquarius. So this tells us we're changing the way that we think, we're changing the way that we communicate, and we're changing perhaps what we are thinking about. So Aquarius themes, we're going to be getting very familiar with these over the next few years. Aquarius is associated with society, our friends, our groups, the teams that we belong to, the people that we see as kindred spirits, the way our cities work. It's connected to technology. It's also politics. It's also connected just generally to the future as well. And this is an air sign, so it's very much about the intellect. It's about how we think. It's connected to higher mind, so God's mind, if you will. And that sort of tells us that we're kind of thinking about things in ways that are new, that are novel, that are different. Sometimes we get flashes of genius or brilliance when Mercury goes into Aquarius. But of course, he is going to run straight into Pluto. So here we have the first activation. There is intensity, mental Mercury intensity, or intense conversations, or we're talking about our shadow. We're talking about matters that have Pluto themes. So power and control, for example, or our fears or toxic situations, pollution, air pollution. We're talking about what's underneath everything. And in our conversations, we don't want to skate over the surface anymore. We want to go underneath and find out what's really going on. Truth is very important when we have Mercury conjunct Pluto. We then have on the 6th of February, Pallas moving into Sagittarius. I will be talking more about that in my weekly forecast, which I do over on Patreon. So Pallas entering Sagittarius changes the way that we deal with our problems. Pallas is a problem solver. She also recognizes patterns. She's a mediator and a diplomat. And maybe going into Sagittarius, the sign that is associated with overseas and foreign affairs, perhaps we are going to get a push to have more diplomacy as far as those kinds of things are concerned. On a personal level, we're looking at how can we simply learn more and be more open-minded. That's also Sagittarius is connected with higher learning, education at universities, for example. It's about theories and theorizing. So Pallas is moving into this sign. It's not going to be for a long period of time because she is going to have a retrograde. But we start to see that to solve our problems, we need to communicate and we need to understand. We need to try to understand one another. So that means we need to learn more about one another. Now, also on this date, Venus is going to be squaring the nodes. This is another important turn as far as our karmic mission is concerned. The squares to the nodes represent some kind of missed step. And Venus in Capricorn tells us that this missed step is in some way connected to the idea of commitment. Who or what do you want to commit to for the long term? Is this worth my time, my energy, and my heart? That is what Venus in Capricorn is asking us, and resolving that wherever this is happening in your chart, wherever Venus is moving in your chart, that part of life requires some kind of re-evaluation, just a moment where you're pressed to decide, is this worthy? Is this situation worthy of my time, energy, and effort, and my heart? Is this going to pay off in the end? We don't look for quick fixes in Capricorn. It's all about delayed gratification with Venus in Capricorn, which is why it's important to ask the question, is this worth it? Is it worthy? Because we're going to be committing for a longer period of time. We will then get some extra emphasis on Capricorn themes as Ceres will then move into Capricorn. This is on the 7th of February. And this is an interesting mix because Capricorn is associated with responsibilities, and Ceres is a parental figure. In fact, Capricorn can also be like a parental figure. It's ruled by Saturn, who often represents the father figure. So Ceres going into Capricorn, it's almost like we're being told that we need to parent ourselves, and we need to do it in a way that accepts that we have responsibilities. So it's about kind of setting really good boundaries in the same way that if you have children, you have to set boundaries for them. You have to ensure that they understand why they're doing what they're doing and where they might be kind of going wrong. You know, we have to kind of have a little bit of tough love sometimes to ensure that our children, but also ourselves, know where those boundaries are, because that keeps us safe. And it also keeps us in a situation where we're kind of able to carry our responsibilities. We're able to do what needs to be done. We're able to support ourselves. So the more you support yourself in a parental way, in a positive parental way, then the better your results will be, because Ceres is associated with both loss and gain. So she can have this kind of Jupiter effect. And it's almost like it's saying, if you are setting good boundaries, if you're nurturing yourself here, if you're nourishing yourself here, then things will grow. Things will develop. Things will become plentiful. You will get what you need. Capricorn doesn't really go for excess, but you will get what you need. So Ceres going into Capricorn is going to deal with these kinds of themes. On the 8th of February, we get a nice connection between Mars also still in Capricorn, sextile to Neptune over there in Pisces. So Mars is exalted in Capricorn. He works really well here. So this is about disciplined energy. It's about taking actions that are once again connected with the long term, connected with long-term results. So we're getting a lot of motivation to work hard, to test our skills, to keep learning, to keep sharing our experiences. But Neptune also invites us to remember that even though this is a hard reality sometimes, that we have to work a lot, so we have to do the things that we must do, Neptune reminds us that there is a bigger picture. Neptune reminds us that there is a soulful side to life. And this is also about our intuition. It's an invitation to act on our intuition. Sometimes we need a little prompt. When we have a lot of Capricorn going on in the air, we need to be reminded that our imagination is limitless, even if we're dealing with real life limits, material world limits. The imagination can do anything and go anywhere. And sometimes when we relax a little, we get a boost of energy because we realize there's a way to do something that perhaps we thought we were blocked with before, or perhaps we just thought we weren't able to do. So Mars sextile Neptune, it's a super creative aspect, and it's encouraging us to use our intuition and imagination. Now also on this date, both Astraea and Vesta are going to station direct. That's kind of interesting. They're both in Gemini. So it's almost as if there's some kind of turnaround as far as our connections are concerned. Maybe we've rebalanced. This is Astraea. She's associated with spiritual justice. So maybe something has been pulled into line as far as our connections are concerned, or maybe the things that we've learned, the things that we're thinking, the way that we're thinking. It feels like there is a change in the way that we're thinking with both Vesta and Astraea stationing direct. So this is kind of interesting, especially with Mars sextile to Neptune, because it's almost like it's kind of feeling like the intuition or our soul's kind of knowing is now feeding in to everything else, and we're starting to feel like actually what I thought before isn't right. Now I'm going to dedicate myself to some kind of new way of thinking or new mantra, new idea. I'm going to work on this now. And this feeling of something new is then accentuated because we're going to have a new moon in Aquarius on the 9th of February. This will be at 20 degrees, 40 minutes of the sign Aquarius. And it's going to be a pretty dynamic lunation because it is also going to be quite tightly square to Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius. So a new start, because it's a new moon that is associated with Aquarius themes. So once again, we have the groups and the friendships and the networks, the future, society, politics. But there is some kind of tension with this. We want this new start, but it's going to cause some kind of disruption, or it is connected to some kind of disruption around our resources, our finances, our security, our values. This is Uranus going through Taurus. So it's tense, and maybe we've got a little bit of expect the unexpected going on around this lunation, but also it should free us in some way so that we can make this new start. On the 11th of February, Sedna is going to station direct. This is super important because this is the last time ever, pretty much as far as we're concerned, that Sedna will station direct in Taurus. She's been in Taurus since the late 1960s, and she will never be in Taurus again in our lifetimes, nor in our children's lifetimes, nor in our grandchildren's lifetimes. She has an 11,000 year orbit. She speaks of very long, slow evolution. She can also speak of bitterness and betrayal, and how things change when we go through very difficult experiences. But if we find meaning, if we make our own meaning from the things that happen to us, then that can transform us and we can end up feeling much more powerful. It never makes it right if somebody else does something they're not supposed to us, but we can decide to change our response so that we once again feel empowered. It's a very challenging degree because she's on 29 Taurus. So as far as the collective is concerned, we are once again feeling some kind of wobble, some kind of urgency when it comes to how we treat the land, how we treat Mother Earth, Taurus, the first of the earth signs. It's associated with agriculture. Of course, there have been a lot of problems coming in with trade routes, general trading. This is also connected with Taurus as well. So we've had the troubles in the waters, so Saturn in Pisces, because of the Middle East conflict. So that's going on. So we have a lot of stuff already coming in as Sedna has been sat on this 29th degree of Taurus. But now she is turning around and she's headed towards her last blast of Taurus teachings. And this will be up until the 27th of April when Sedna goes into Gemini for good. Now, as well as working on issues to do with trading and agriculture and how we treat the earth, we also, of course, have money matters with Taurus too. And we might find that there are some kind of issues that are coming up perhaps with the banks or some kind of concerns around our sort of international financial situations. And maybe this is also because one of the big teachings of Sedna going through Taurus has been about what is truly valuable. Maybe we have placed too much emphasis on certain things and that now needs to change. So we can read that in quite an open way, and it might be helpful just to see where is 29 Taurus in your own chart, because Sedna is just going to be bringing in some impressions. She works much more for the collective, of course, because she's such a slow moving body. But we're also all receiving this and we are also all part of the collective. So maybe it would be helpful to ask this question: what do I value here in this part of my chart, wherever Sedna is moving, wherever 29 Taurus is? What do I value here? What is truly important for me here? Does something need to change? Do I need to release something? Do I need to transcend? Do I need to get over some kind of past deep disappointment, betrayal, sadness, or something that didn't work? It can even be where you feel like you betrayed yourself. So Sedna will bring this opportunity for all of us to question these things before she goes into Gemini in April. We're now reaching a very dynamic period of the month because on the 13th of February, Mars will enter Aquarius. So firstly, wherever Mars moves, it changes the types of goals that we go for. It changes the way that we act. This is a sign associated with mental energy, as I mentioned before. So we get a real activation of the mind, the way that we're thinking about things. And Mars also has a tendency to speed up and inflame. So if we go back to the idea that this sign is connected with society and people and groups, we can start to see how sometimes Mars in Aquarius can cause a few troubles, a few problems when he's working in shadow. And the shadow is right there because Mars is going to run straight into Pluto on the 14th of February. So This is one of the biggest first activations of Pluto in Aquarius. We should be seeing out there in the world something occurring that's going to give us a real blast of this is what this transit's going to be about. Some kind of, again, manifestation. Mars conjunct Pluto, generally speaking, can be sort of very confrontational. It can be very positive because it gives us the energy and drive and will to battle through our fears and our shadows. We can have intense courage, intense bravery with Mars conjunct Pluto. But we can also have the idea of freedom fighters, revolutionaries. Now, sometimes we need those in society. We need people to stand up and be counted, to fight for change, to fight for a revolution, to fight for freedom. Of course, freedom is a massive concern to Aquarius. So we're motivated by a desire, Pluto, we're motivated by a desire for freedom. I want to get away from this, says Mars conjunct Pluto. It's too restrictive. We need something new. It could be fighting for something new. So there are some positives. I don't want to kind of sweep those away, but neither do I want to kind of play down how potent this transit is, because Pluto is fresh and new into Aquarius, and we are just starting to see how these energies are coming into play. So it's activation time, and then we're going to have Venus moving into Aquarius as well, and of course she's going to run straight into Pluto. Remember I said Venus and Mars are traveling close together now. On the 16th of February, that is when Venus goes into Aquarius, and that will mean that we have 5 bodies in Aquarius: Venus, Pluto, Mars, Mercury, and the Sun. The Sun will be changing signs in a few days' time, but we are going to have a huge amount of emphasis on Aquarius themes. I think we'll also be looking at a lot of political heat going on as well. Of course, there's a lot of media going on right now. I'm recording this on the 17th of January. So we're getting a lot of conversation now about the US elections. There's going to be an election in the UK. That's going to be later this year. But certainly a lot of conversation about this is heating up. And of course, whatever happens on a political level, that affects all of us and it affects the future. So this is why we just need to be very mindful that things are quite heated around this time. So with Venus going into Aquarius, this changes how we relate to one another. Again, Aquarius, the mind. So relationships can sometimes cool down. We can want to take a step back, or we feel like we want more space, but it's a weird one because Venus is then conjunct Pluto, which is a planet associated with intimacy. So that's a bit of a conundrum, and there's complexities. Venus conjunct Pluto is complexities in relationships. But then again, the Aquarius side of things could allow us the space we need to deal with these complexities. And maybe it's also inviting us to drop deeply into the heart so that we can be honest with our friends, so that we can be honest with the group, so that we can truly love one another equally. In Aquarius is again about the group, about people. How can we love people? Maybe this is perhaps a theme coming in. How can we love one another, as we're kind of taught with different religions and different spiritual ways of thinking? How can we love one another when we are fighting one another? So this is a theme that comes in. And again, maybe we're being shown something about changing our values. Pluto is about eradication, elimination, remembering Sedna, still on that 29th degree of Taurus, the sign that Venus rules. So we have some kind of shifting values, which is going to create space or create something new, or it's going to free us because it's in Aquarius. We then have the Sun moving into Pisces. This is the 19th of February. So that will begin to break down some of the Aquarius emphasis. There's still a lot of it, but we're now shifting into Pisces season. So this is the last sign of the zodiac, and it is a sign associated with peace and connection, unity. It's a sign that's associated with our spirituality, our soul. And it's also a time to sort of put aside ego, to allow ourselves to just be part of something bigger, to recognize we are part of something much bigger. We are part of the cosmos. We are all stars shining. This is the sun going into Pisces, realizing and remembering our interconnection to all things. Now, this date is super important because we're also going to have Chiron conjunct the North Node. So Chiron is the wounded healer, and the North Node shows us where we need to go for our spiritual evolution. It's in the sign of Aries. So it is telling us very clearly we need to focus on our individual healing journey, because what affects the individual affects all. Remembering that Mars is the ruler of Aries and Mars is in Aquarius, the sign associated with groups, networks, friends. You know the score now. So we have this feeling from Chiron conjunct the North Node that it is very important for us to face our wounds, to bravely go towards healing so that we can accept ourselves and therefore accept one another. Chiron had a terrible time with being rejected by his parents, so he can symbolize where we feel too different, we feel unable, disabled, we feel like we're not good enough, we feel like we're unacceptable. And yes, the fear of ridicule and rejection can happen with Chiron. We can just simply feel like we're not strong enough. Aries is about strength and energy and vigor and drive. But with Chiron here, we're all feeling maybe a bit hurt, like we've been a bit battered by life, especially for the last few years. And so, yeah, we're feeling weaker, we're feeling a bit vulnerable. And perhaps that's the point. We need to deal with our vulnerabilities. Now, sometimes Chiron can speak of the things that we can't heal. And of course, there are sometimes things we cannot heal physically. I have arthritis in my right hip. I can't make it better magically, but there's a lot I can do to strengthen the muscles around that hip, obviously to, make sure that I exercise and keep myself as well as possible. So I'm just talking about a physical complaint, a physical issue that can't be fully healed. But we also have emotional things. We can't change the past. We can't wave a magic wand and pretend that really bad thing that happened didn't happen. But we do have to find a way to go forwards, to live again with the pain, with the suffering, to learn to live despite the pain, despite the suffering. Chiron conjunct the North Node is about many of these tough themes, but it is enormously healing when we face those things, when we deal with those things. This is about recovering our strength, realizing we are not weak for having weaknesses. On the 22nd of February, Venus will form that conjunction to Mars, so they come together in Aquarius. Once again, the idea of uniting, bringing together the heart with what we do, with what we want. This is all about attraction. What kind of people, Aquarius, are you attracting into your life? What kind of people are you attracted to? Not just physically or sexually, but the types of people that kind of inspire you, that interest you, the kinds of people that you want to get to know because they make you feel different. They make you think in different ways. They challenge you. They challenge you in positive, constructive ways. Venus conjunct Mars is like bringing people together in Aquarius. And for some people, there might also be some issues with attraction to friends, friends becoming lovers, lovers becoming friends. There may be some kind of stories around this too. On the 23rd of February, Mercury will go into Pisces. So now we have a Pisces build-up. You can see on the chart here, we have Mercury, the Sun, Saturn, and also Hygeia and Neptune now all hanging out in Pisces. So now we have a lot of emphasis on feelings in Pisces because this is a water sign. It's a surge of feelings, which is now affecting the way that we think. Mercury going into Pisces tells us that, well, firstly, the unconscious voice is louder. It's more present. We're more aware that there are things being said underneath everything. And that could also speak of the subtext. We become aware of the subtext. We become aware of spiritual and psychic messages coming through, messages from our guardians and guides on the other side. So we're thinking in much more imaginative ways. And we're also maybe allowing our emotions to kind of govern what we're thinking. So that can work positively or negatively. And then on the 24th of February, Mercury will be playing into the full moon in Virgo. So the full moon in Virgo, we have a peak point of the lunar cycle, which is raising issues connected to our healing, again, because Virgo is a sign associated with health. It feels like we're very focused emotionally on how do we make things better. But the opposition to Pisces points, Mercury, the Sun, and also Saturn, the opposition to these is perhaps making us feel it's impossible. I can't do enough. I can't figure this out. I don't know what to do. It all feels too uncertain. So this full moon, we're going to be invited to try to be more realistic and also just more practical in our approach. We're going to need that. This is the moon in Virgo. We're going to need that very practical approach to figure out what we need to do next to make our lives feel more efficient and just for our own well-being. Now we end the month with some interesting configurations because on the 24th of February, Venus will square Jupiter. The 27th of February, Mars will square Jupiter. So basically Venus and Mars are both squaring Jupiter. And during this time, we are building up to a triple conjunction, which is exact on the 28th of February between the Sun, Mercury, and Saturn. So Venus square to Jupiter. We have some kind of story here about enormous attraction, this feeling that we want Mars more Jupiter. There can be some sense of overdone, too much. Remember, Mars aggravates and the square is a tense aspect. So overdone, overreaction, too much, too big. This kind of configuration makes me think of things like, what happens when you get what you want? And do you still want it when you have it? Because the square is saying there's this potential to have all this stuff, Jupiter in Taurus, but maybe it's out of alignment with our energy, Mars, or it's out of alignment with our values, Venus. So there's some kind of sense as well, I think, because Venus and Mars are in Aquarius, maybe there's something about, people tell us this is what we should want, this is what we should love, this is what we should have to make you happy. But maybe we're questioning that. And that can make us feel a bit insecure, unsafe, or like we're kind of not really connecting with people. And so there is this potential for overreacting or trying to kind of be all things to everyone. Venus square Jupiter is like, I just give you my heart. I give you absolutely everything. You know, do you need to borrow some money as well? It's like, I'm going to give you absolutely everything so that you like me, so that you're attracted to me. So again, it's all very overdone. But this Sun, Mercury, Saturn really interests me, this triple conjunction at the end of the month, because it's almost like it's giving us this immediate place to go to deal with all of this stuff. Remember too, Chiron is still on that north node. We're still going through this really powerful healing process. When the Sun joins Mercury on the 28th of February, Mercury is going to be far, far away. It's as far away from the Earth as it can get. So that means that Mercury is about the mind and connections and thinking about things. So it's almost like it's saying, right now we're being asked to put some of this very logical, rational way of thinking to one side so that we can receive this cosmic message. Sun conjunct Mercury is a moment when Mercury is receiving messages from the Creator, the Sun, and then passing them on through to us through our feelings, through our sensing, through symbols and signs. Pisces, spiritual connection. Remember before I spoke about how this can speak of our guides and guardians kind of giving us messages as well. So we're getting this message coming through, but maybe with Saturn, we're resisting the message. It's an important instruction with Saturn. This is like, you know, wisdom from old bones, wisdom from the ancestors, ancient wisdom is coming through to us. But perhaps with Saturn, we don't want to hear it, or as I say, we're resisting this knowing, this knowledge, this intuition, this dream. Something about it is making us feel limited or blocked, or maybe even not good enough. And yet, at the same time, this triple conjunction is telling us the information that we need to hear for our spiritual well-being, for our overall well-being. It's kind of saying, let's bypass the ego and get straight to the point here. These messages or this spiritual information is going to help us to step into our authority. It's going to help us to feel more responsible and more capable. Self-mastery is an attribute of the Sun conjunct Saturn. So I feel like this month is a long instruction to face the things that we find challenging about ourselves and about life, but a constant reassurance that what is coming through to us now is going to be beneficial for us going forwards. It's going to help us to heal, and it is going to help us all realize our dreams and build the better world that we all hope for. This brings me to the end of this reading for February 2024. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please click a like and subscribe. And if you would like to hear more from me, please check the links below to find my Patreon, Substack, website, and social media links. I hope to see you again in cyberspace, and in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path.